Welcome children. Today we will start with the fourth chapter of geography for standard 9th, climate, and this is the first part of the chapter. There are three basic elements when we learn the natural environment of an area. The basic elements are landform, drainage and climate. We have already learned about landform and drainage, and in this chapter we are going to learn about climate. Now why there some places are cold, some are hot, some have windy, some get high rainfall, some places get low rainfall, or why do we wear woolens in December, why is it hot in May, and why it rains in June and July? Why does all these things happen? Let's learn the answers to this through this chapter, climate. Now children, all of you know what is atmosphere. Yes, it is the air which surrounds our earth is called as atmosphere. So what is weather? Weather is a day-to-day condition of the atmosphere. The various changes that occur in the atmosphere, it changes minute to minute, hour by hour, or day to day. So now look at this figure. You see right now this boy is feeling very hot because the sun is direct rays of the sun is very hot, so he'll say the weather is very hot, and within a few hours he'll see dark clouds have gathered, so he takes out his umbrella and we say the weather is rainy. So you see children, weather fluctuates very often. If I peep out of my window at 1 p.m. I see it's a sunny day, and by 7 I see dark clouds have gathered and it's going to rain. So the weather keeps changing minute to minute, hour to hour, and day to day. So children, you can see this is a weather report which we can find in a newspaper. In the corner of a newspaper there is a weather report. Today we can see it on internet also. And here you can see there are various columns. The first column are the day wise: Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. The second column shows the condition, whether it's going to rain or going to be sunny. Then the fourth column has the maximum and minimum temperature, and the last column is the humidity, the presence of moisture in the air. Okay, so you can see Wednesday it is predicting it's going to rain. The maximum temperature is 18, minimum is 16. Thursday we see a change, it's cloudy and sunny, and maximum is 22 and minimum is 13 and humidity is 14. Okay, so day wise this is the weather report which is given day wise. Okay, and it keeps changing every day. Now what is climate? Climate is the average weather condition over a long period of time, over a large area like India. Okay, and how long? More than 30 years. The average weather conditions that we take over a long period of time is, and over a large area, is called as climate. So children, here you see a graph which is tabulating the year-wise temperature and the amount of rainfall. The blue bars are the rainfall and the green line that you see is the temperature. This is for 1 year this has been recorded. Okay, right from January to December they have noted down the temperature and the amount of rainfall. Then the year-wise are compiled in another graph. Okay, so you can see they have compiled it for 3 years, 2000, 2001 and 2002, the average annual temperature. And when this is recorded for more than 30 years, then we can predict, okay, these are the cold months, these are the hot months, these are the rainy months, and then we can show the climate of a place. So it is an average weather condition. Okay, so children, we can say weather can change in just a few hours. Climate takes hundreds or even thousands of years to change. Now it's okay if the weather changes hour to hour, okay, but a climate, if it changes, then it is going to have a drastic impact on that place. Now the elements of weather and climate are the same. They take care of the temperature, the wind, the humidity, the atmospheric pressure and the amount of rainfall. It's only that it is day to day, and that is an average weather condition. The elements of weather and climate are the same. And which are the elements? They are temperature, you can see temperature, the sun, the wind, the humidity, the amount of moisture present in the atmosphere, the atmospheric pressure, high pressure, low pressure, and precipitation is the amount of rainfall. So children, if you have to say the difference between weather and climate, we can say weather is the day-to-day phenomena, okay? Day-to-day phenomena, atmospheric condition over a short period of time. Whereas climate is the average weather condition for a long period of time. How long? More than 30 years over a large area. Now let us children define weather. It is an hour to hour day-to-day condition of the atmosphere, and climate is the average weather condition of a place for a long period of time. Now the world is divided into a number of climatic regions. Do you know what type of climate India has? Yes, India is described to have a monsoon type of climate. Okay, monsoon type of a climate. Now this climate is not only in India, but we find it mostly observed in Southeast Asia. Okay, here all this have the monsoon type of climate. Okay, then you will say monsoon means rainy. No, it's monsoon comes from the word mosim. It's a Arabic word which comes from the word mosim, which means seasons. Okay, so we will have year to year, we'll have summer season, then rainy season, and then winter season. Okay, and this monsoon type of climate is observed in Southeast Asia. India and Southeast Asia all have monsoon type of climate. Now we have mentioned that India has a monsoon type of climate, but that doesn't mean that this climate is the same throughout our country. Our country is very vast, and there are regional variations in climatic conditions. Let us take temperature and precipitation, that is rainfall. So we see that the temperature during summers in Rajasthan, if you see, it is 50 degrees. It's so hot. Whereas the same temperature in Jammu and Kashmir, because it is at a height, is 20 degrees Celsius. Isn't it? That is why in summers we all want to go to a hill station, because the temperatures are less there. So we see that there are regional variations in temperature during summer. Now we can see the temperature difference during winter also. During winter, you can see Dras, Jammu Kashmir, the temperature here at that time is minus 45 degrees, so cold. Whereas Trivandrum in Kerala, it is 22 degrees Celsius. Now let us look into the variations in climatic condition according to the rainfall. So you can see the Himalayan regions have high snowfall. They don't have rain, they have snow. Okay, and you can see northeast Meghalaya, they get very high rainfall. Even the western coast, because of the western Ghats, get high rainfall, whereas Rajasthan gets very low rainfall. So we see the amount of rainfall also varies from region to region. Now children, we see that the coastal areas, there is not a lot of difference in the temperature. Okay, the winters will be not very cold, the summers will not be very hot because of the effect of the sea around it. Okay, the water bodies that is around it. Whereas if you can see, the interior of our country will have extreme climates, very cold and very hot. So the coastal areas, the temperature remains moderate. Okay. Now, due to the regional variations in climatic condition, it gives rise to variety in the lives of people. So you can see the climatic conditions. According to the climatic conditions, houses are built, the way people wear clothes, and the food they eat, it depends on the climatic conditions of that place. Now children, let us understand the factors which affect climate of any place. They are called as climatic controls. What are the factors that affect the climate of any place? Yes, we are going to learn about all these factors. They are latitude, altitude, pressure and wind system, distance from the sea, ocean currents, and relief features. So we learn about these 6 factors that affect climate of a place. Now children, let us understand how latitude affects the climate of a place. Now children, all of you know what are latitudes. They are imaginary lines drawn on the earth's surface. Okay, and they are horizontal lines. You can see these red lines that you see are horizontal lines, and the vertical lines are longitudes. Now let's talk about latitude. We start from 0, the 0 degree, which is called as the equator. It divides the earth into 2 equal halves. The top part is northern hemisphere and below the equator is the southern hemisphere. And there are 90 lines in the northern hemisphere and 90 lines in the southern hemisphere. Okay, 90 degrees north is the north pole, 90 degrees south is the south pole. Now let us understand how latitude affects the climate of a place. Now equator and the Tropic of Cancer, which is 23.5 degree north, and Tropic of Capricorn, which is 23.5 degrees south. The sun is either at Tropic of Cancer, equator, or Capricorn, and the places located near the equator, they receive the direct rays of the sun throughout the year. Okay, throughout the year they're receiving the direct rays of the sun, so the temperature remains high throughout the year in these places. Okay, on the other hand, above the Tropic of Capricorn, they are receiving the slanting rays of the sun. Okay, so since they receive the slanting rays of the sun, they have low temperatures throughout the year. Now children, this figure shows you exactly the kind of climate is going to be there at the latitude. So you see at the equator it is very hot, receiving the direct rays of the sun, and between Tropic of Cancer and 30 degrees north and Tropic of Capricorn and 30 degrees south, it remains warm because they are also receiving the direct rays of the sun. Whereas the above 30 degrees, what happens? They get the slanting rays of the sun, so those areas will remain cold and North Pole and South Pole will be freezing. Okay, now this is the map of the heat zones of the world. You can see equator, Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn receive the direct rays of the sun, so this area is very hot. That's why it's marked in red. Okay, and above the Tropic of Cancer or below the Tropic of Capricorn, you see they have it's called the temperate zone. This is a north temperate zone, and below it's called the south temperate zone. They have moderate type of climate, neither very cold nor very hot. And you see above 66.5 degrees, it is frigid zone, almost freezing kind of temperatures are there. That is called as the frigid zone. Okay, so this is how latitude influences the climate of a place. So children, as you know, the earth is spherical, and due to the curvature of the earth, the amount of solar energy that is received varies according to the latitude. So you can see the equator receives the direct rays, it's very hot, and so as we go higher up from the equator, the temperature generally decreases from the equator towards the poles, and at the poles they are receiving the slanting rays. So you can see the North Pole and South Pole are receiving the slanting rays of the sun, and that is why these have very cold temperatures. They are very cold, almost they are freezing. Okay, so we see that latitude is one of the factors that affect climate. Now let us understand the second factor that affects climate, that is altitude. So how does altitude affect the climate? Let us understand this. Now children, altitude means height above sea level. So all of you know that there is a drop of temperature 1 degree Celsius for every 166 meters rise in height. So children, as one goes up from the surface of the earth to higher altitude, the atmosphere becomes less dense and the temperature decreases. And this is the reason why hill stations are cooler during summer. So children, you see at the Earth's surface, the air molecules are dense and they have the capacity to trap more sun's heat. But as we go up from the surface of the Earth, what happens? The air molecules are less concentration of air molecules, so they are unable to trap the sun's heat, and that is why the temperature decreases. Okay, so the atmosphere is less dense and temperature decreases. This is why with altitude that there is a difference in temperature. Okay, so that altitude also affects climate. Now children, this is the map of India, and let us look at two places on the map of India. You can see this is Jalandhar and the other is Shimla. Now both Jalandhar and Shimla are situated almost on the same latitude. Okay. Now even though they are situated on the same latitude, yet Shimla is colder than Jalandhar. What is the reason for this? This is because of the altitude. The altitude of Shimla from the sea level is 2206 meters, whereas Jalandhar is only 226 meters. So you see, altitude is one of the factors that affect climate. So as we go up, there is less air molecules to trap the sun's rays, and the atmosphere becomes less dense, and therefore the temperature decreases. So altitude is one of the factors that affect climate. Another very important factor that affects climate is pressure and wind system. Children, let me try and explain this to you in a very simple manner. Imagine there is a piece of land. Okay, you can see a piece of land, and there is an ocean nearby. You can see this blue is the ocean. So, and all of you know that there is air over the land, and obviously there is air over the ocean also. Okay. Now imagine it is summer season. So what happens in the summer season? The sun rays shines on the land. Okay, and as you know, land gets heated. Okay, as well as the air above the land also get heated. In comparison, what happens to the ocean? The ocean does not get heated quickly, and that is the property of water. Water does not get hot easily, and if it is hot, it does not cool quickly. Okay, so that is the property of water. Now, so what happens when the air above the land gets heated up? So what will happen? Warm air is light and it rises. Okay. So children, here you see when the land gets heated up, the air gets warm, and warm air rises, creating an area of low pressure. Okay. So whereas the air over the ocean is cool, and cool air does not rise. So that's why creating an area of high pressure. Now children, you must remember, whenever there is a difference in pressure, wind starts to blow. The more the pressure, the more the winds. Okay, and wind always blows from high pressure to low pressure. So now tell me, from where will the winds blow? Obviously from high pressure towards low pressure. So the winds will blow from sea to land. Okay. Now children, let us see what happens during winters. Okay, it just the opposite happens. Now what happens in winters? The air over the land is cold. Okay, and the air over the ocean is not as cold. It is warmer than the land. So now what will happen? It will happen just the reverse. Warm air over the ocean will rise. So you see, in winters the ocean is slightly warmer than the land, so warm air will rise. Okay, because it is light, creating an area of low pressure. Now from where will the wind blow? Obviously wherever there is less air. So wind will blow from land to sea, from high pressure to low pressure. As I already told you, wind always blows from high pressure to low pressure. This you have to remember. Now children, always remember this diagram is important. Rising air, it creates, which is warm, it rises, creates an area of low pressure, and this warm air has moisture in it, and the winds start to converge. Okay, converging takes place here. Whereas where there is high pressure, why there is high pressure? Because the air is dense, it sinks, and it is dry air with no moisture. So here the winds diverge. Okay, so this is an area of low pressure and this is an area of high pressure. Now wherever there will be high pressure, it's going to be clear weather. Okay, where there is going to be low pressure, it's going to be wet weather. So clear sunny weather is going to be wherever there is high pressure. Wherever there is low pressure, it's going to be wet weather. Now children, pressure and wind system depends on the latitude and altitude of a place. Let us understand how this happens. Now you can see here the direct rays of the sun fall on the equator and the tropics, isn't it? The other areas get the slanting rays of the sun. So which area is hot? This equatorial belt, and then between the tropics is the hottest region, whereas the poles are very cold on freezing. Now children, here you see, because we get the direct rays of the sun at the equator, what happens to the air around the equator? It gets warm due to the direct rays of the sun, and as you know, warm air rises. Yes, it gets warm, expands and begins to rise. Now children, due to the rotation of the earth, the winds get deflected. Okay, and now to remember this, which direction it gets deflected, remember to make an S. Okay, over the equator you can say make an S. So in the northern hemisphere it gets deflected towards the right, and in the southern hemisphere it gets deflected towards the left. So draw an S and you'll never forget. Right in the northern hemisphere, left in the southern hemisphere. So children, the warm air rises from the equator. You can see, because it is warm, it rises, it becomes light, it rises, and then it gets deflected towards the right due to the rotation of the earth in the northern hemisphere, and towards the left in the southern hemisphere. Now when it gets deflected, what happens? Okay, as it is writing, it is getting deflected, and at about 30 degrees it becomes cool and dense, and it sinks back to the earth's surface. So you can see in the northern hemisphere it gets deflected, it cools, and again it's sinking back, okay, to the earth's surface at 30 degrees. So at equator, air is rising, slightly deflecting towards the right in the northern hemisphere and left in the southern hemisphere, and then it cools and then it sinks at 30 degrees north and south of the equator. So children, you see some of the air that gets cooler and denser, it sinks, and some of it flows back towards the equator. It divides into two parts. You can see some of them flow back towards the equator and some towards the pole. So you can see in the northern hemisphere some towards the equator and some towards the north pole. Similarly, down you can see here some towards the equator and some towards the south pole. The air sinks. Okay. Now children, here you see that at about 60 degrees, what happens at 60 degrees? The air which is flowing towards the poles now collides with the cold air which is coming from the poles. Now these two airs, you can see this is dark blue and light blue, yeah, they're going to collide. Okay, so with the cold air which is coming from the poles, both the sides, you can see in the north pole and in the south pole. You can see here some which is flowing towards the pole and the cold air coming from the poles. Now the collision of these two currents, air currents, okay, what happens? Forces the air to move upwards. So it's moving upwards. Can you see? And then moves towards the pole, okay, and back towards the mid latitude. So you can see this is a circular movement. This is what is happening, okay. Have you understood? So you see this air which is moving towards the poles, it collides with the cold air which is coming from the poles, and then due to the collision the air is made to pushed upwards, where it moves towards the pole and then again back to the mid latitude to at about 60 degrees, okay. So you can see this is how the air currents go in a circular manner. So you see children here, you can see at the equator the air rises, then air sinks at around 30 degrees, then also at 60 degrees air rises. So this pattern of circular air circulation gives rise to differences in rainfalls at different latitudes. So children, as the air rises, it loses its capacity to hold moisture. So as it rises, because it is warm air and creating an area of low pressure. Okay, so as a result, what happens? Rainfall is highest at the latitudes where the air rises and lowest at the latitude where the air sinks. So you can see equator, we have rainfall 60 degrees, also where it's sinking we have highest rainfall. So I hope you have understood the factor of pressure and wind which affects climate. Children, the next factor is distance from the sea. Now another factor that we have to discuss is distance from the sea, and this is, I can see our country, these are the coastal areas, and wherever there are coastal areas the climate remains moderate. Moderate means not too cold and not too hot, okay. So we'll understand how this affects. Now children, this is a picture of a coastal area. You can see this, the sea plays a moderating effect on the land. Now what happens during the daytime? Land gets heated up faster, okay, because land has the property of absorbing and releasing heat quickly also. So during the day it gets very hot, and as I told you, water, what is the property of water? Yes, it does not get hot easily, and if it is hot then it does not cool easily. So how does it affect, has a moderate effect on the land? So children, during the day the land gets hot due to the sun's rays, and as you know, when the air gets hot above the land it starts to rise, creating low pressure, and as you know the ocean does not get hot, okay. So winds blow from sea to land, which is called as sea breeze, and thus moderates the climate of the coastal areas. So they don't have extreme climates. It's neither too hot nor too cold. So this is during the day. What happens in the night? Now during the night the land cools faster, whereas the water takes a longer time to cool. So now warm air is over the ocean and warm air rises, and then since warm air rises creating low pressure, so what happens? Breeze from the land blows towards the sea, which is called as land breeze, cool air moving towards the sea. So this also moderates the climate of the coastal areas. Now let's take an example of India. Mumbai, which is near the sea, Arabian Sea, and Delhi is in the interior of the country. How is the difference in the climate? Okay, Mumbai has a moderate climate, whereas Delhi has an extreme climate. So you see children, Delhi is far away from the sea and it is surrounded by land. We have here Haryana and Uttar Pradesh, whereas Mumbai is near the sea, the Arabian Sea. Now what happens to Mumbai? How does it have a moderating climate? Because during the day the land gets heated up, so breeze blows from the sea to land, and in the night the land gets cooler faster and the sea remains warm. Then breeze flows from land to sea. Okay, so that is why in the daytime it is sea breeze and in the night time it is land breeze, thus making the place climate moderate. So Mumbai has a moderate climate. So you see children, Mumbai is closer to the sea, so that is why it has a moderate climate. Moderate climate means that it is neither too cold nor too hot. Okay, it does, because of the effect of the sea. And which sea? The Arabian Sea. Now Delhi is very far away from the sea, so distance of the sea affects the climate. So Delhi has extreme climate. It is very cold during winters and very hot during summers, and this condition is known as continentality. That means it is very hot during summers and very cold during winters. Okay, the next factor which affects climate is ocean currents. Now what are ocean currents? Let us study this. Now ocean currents also affect climate. Now what are ocean currents? They are movement of ocean water flowing constantly in a definite direction. So you can see here the blue colors are the oceans. There's so much of water around it. Okay, and they like in the rivers there is movement of water, in the ocean also there is movement of water. Okay, in a continuous flow and in a definite pattern. So children, here you can see the movement of ocean currents due to the rotation of the earth in the northern hemisphere. These ocean currents, that is movement of ocean water which in a definite direction, they flow clockwise. In the northern hemisphere they flow clockwise and in a circular manner, tracing the coastlines of the continents. You can see in the southern hemisphere they flow anti-clockwise, okay, in a circular manner pattern. They follow a definite pattern and tracing the coastline. So this is how the ocean currents flow, anti-clockwise in the southern hemisphere and clockwise in the northern hemisphere. Now children, you must know that there are two types of ocean currents. They are warm currents and cold currents. Warm currents, they originate near the equator and flow towards the poles. And cold currents, they originate in the high latitudes, like from the polar regions, and flow towards the equator. Now children, this is a world map showing all the ocean currents of the world. Okay, and this red line that you see is the equator. As I told you, there are two types of currents, warm currents and cold currents. Now the warm currents are shown in red arrows and the cold currents are shown in blue arrows. Okay, and as I told you, warm currents originate from the equator. Why they are warm? Because they receive the direct rays of the sun and flow towards the poles, whereas the cold currents originate, they are cold, okay, because they originate from the polar regions and move towards the equator. Okay, now these ocean currents act like a conveyor belt. You have seen a conveyor belt when you go to an airport where they put their luggage and it goes round and round till you find your luggage, you pick up your luggage and take it, but till then the luggage moves round and round. Okay, so similarly they act like conveyor belts. Now from the equator they're transporting warm air towards the poles, and then the cold water from the poles back towards the equator. Okay, and so these currents influence the climate of a place. Wherever there is warm current blowing, it will get rainfall and the temperature is going to be warmer there and it will have moderate type of climate. Wherever there are cold currents, they won't get any rainfall. So you see all the deserts are on the western side of our earth. Okay, so you can see Southern America, we'll have here deserts. If you can see Australia, because of the cold currents, this part of Australia, half of Australia is a desert because they have the cold currents. Okay, and warm currents moderates the climate, whereas cold currents makes the climate worse of that place. Okay, and because the winds are dense, they don't have any moisture in them, so there is no rainfall. So ocean currents play a role in affecting the climate of a place. Now the last factor that affects climate is relief feature. Now relief features play a very important role in affecting the climate of a place. Now what is relief? Relief is the difference of elevation. Okay, so high mountains actually play an important role in the climate of a place, especially high mountains that we have in India. We have the Himalayas, the Western Ghats. They all play a very important role in bringing rain. So what happens now, you can see here in this picture there is a mountain and there is a city on this side of the mountain and a city on the other side of the mountain. So how does it affect the climate? So you see, suppose this is the wind direction, which are moisture laden winds, and they are coming, they're carrying moisture, and okay, they get obstructed by a mountain. When they get obstructed by a mountain, what happens? So you see children here, the moisture laden winds, when they are obstructed by a mountain, it drops all the moisture on the side of the mountain, okay, which has obstructed it, and it does not allow the moisture laden winds to go to the other side. So the mountain acts as a barrier, and this affects the climate of a place. Now look at this picture diagram to understand how relief affects the climate of a place. So you can see there are moist winds, okay, they are obstructed by a mountain, they climb up, the cool air condenses, okay, then and it becomes so heavy because it's obstructed that all the rainfall is on the windward side, the windwards, from where the winds are blowing. It's not that the wind doesn't go on the other side, they go on the other side, but by the time they have lost all the moisture, and here the winds are dry, so this region or the other side of the mountain does not get any rainfall, and this side is called as the leeward side. It is also called the rain shadow area. That means it does not get, because of the mountains, the shadow created, and this side of the mountain does not get any rain. So this side which does not get rain is called the leeward side, and the side which gets the rainfall is called the windward side of the mountain. So mountain plays a major role in climate. Children, with this we come to the end of the chapter, and in my next video I'll be discussing how these factors affect the climate of India. Till then, do view and subscribe. Thank you.